Welcome to Development, One Topic at a Time, the podcast powered by Canvas Bridge, where we explore the ideas, people, and innovations shaping a more equitable world. Today, we are discussing one of the most urgent public health and social justice issues of our time: Black maternal health and the importance of learning and ensuring that every woman receives safe, respectful, and equitable maternity care. I am delighted to welcome Aramide Caunt, registered midwife, founder and director of the Black Maternal Advocate, and a member of the Health Equity Expert Reference Group for the National Maternity and Neonatal Taskforce. Congratulations, Aramide, for this new appointment.
Thank you so much.
This is amazing. I'm so glad you are there. They need to hear your voice.
Yes, I'm honored to be part of the group, and looking forward to all the work that's going to come from it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. So, Aramide, I know, like, for those who are here today, and meeting you for the first time, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work?
Okay. Firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's really lovely to be here. So, as said, my name is Aramide Caunt. I'm a registered midwife with over 12 years of clinical experience. I'm also the founder and director of the Black Maternal Advocate. At its heart, my work is about making sure that Black women and birthing people are heard and held and treated with dignity and the safety they deserve, both within the system and when the system fails. This was developed from a personal experience that I had in 2023 after the birth of my twins. Unfortunately, the system failed me. So, as much as I have clinical experience and knowledge, I have lived experience. And this is a journey that I never anticipated, if I'm honest. I trained as a midwife because I genuinely loved the work and it was a calling. The privilege of being able to support women and their families through one of the most profound experiences of their lives. And for years, I poured everything into that. But then I became a patient myself. And what I experienced on the other side of that bed, the dismissal, the gaps in care, the moments where I, as a trained midwife, had to fight to be taken seriously, was genuinely shocking. Not surprising, but shocking. And this is where this has all come from. That experience cracked something open in me because I knew this wasn't just my story. I knew that many women had suffered from this, and I'd heard many versions from the Black community, especially women and their families. And it just reached a point where I thought, I cannot just keep witnessing this. I need to do something about this. I need to contribute to structural change. So my advocacy work wasn't like a career pivot. It was a calling and something I could not ignore.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I'm always blown away when I listen to you, and you know that, I really enjoy talking to you, and your story,
Likewise with you.
thank you. Your story is so inspiring, and that
Thank you.
tagline that you use, heard and held,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. There's so much
Thank
care
you.
into that, and every time I see your posts on LinkedIn, they always make sense. They're not just on the
Mm.
surface; they're actually very
Yeah.
deep. They tell the reader that it comes from someone who's got lived experience, and like it's all about information behind that, and also a
Yeah.
lot of care.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank
you're welcome. Just
you.
amazing. Aramide, at what point did you, I know you just, mentioned that briefly, but then
Mm,
if it's not re-traumatizing for you, and
of course. Yeah.
obviously, because we're sharing your story so that other people can learn about it, and that's the
Yeah.
journey that you've undertaken now. Could you give us, again, some insight about, what really happened to you,
Yeah.
and in a way that, as I say it again, that feels comfortable for you.
Of course. Thank you. And I appreciate you um, thinking of my psychological safety. I really appreciate that. And thank God that I'm at a stage where yes, what I went through is traumatizing, but the what when I look at it from what I can do from telling my story, for me, that kind of overrides, not necessarily overrides, but it helps reduce the trauma or the re-traumatizing, because it's like, actually, I'm not just telling my story for no reason. It is to help, and it's to contribute, and it's my turning my pain into purpose. So when people like you just said, if it's not re-traumatizing for you, it's just like, no, but actually this is needed. And so it's my privilege to be able to share my story. So I'll try and keep it, short, as much as possible. So I fell pregnant in 2022 with twins. So what we call DCDA twins, where they basically have separate placentas and they're in separate sacs. So that's kind of the most straightforward twin pregnancy you can have, which I was very thankful for. And throughout the pregnancy, I had hyperemesis gravidarum, which is excessive and extreme nausea and vomiting. Sometimes it can just be vomiting, and sometimes it can just be extreme nausea. But throughout the pregnancy, that's what I had. I also had gestational diabetes, and that through the pregnancy, I lost a significant amount of weight because of the hyperemesis. So I lost about 18 kilos. And the plan, as I'd got to 36 weeks, the plan was for me to have a cesarean section. So my first birth was a textbook home birth, quick labor. So I knew what good care was looked like. But then when I knew I had to have a cesarean, I was gutted, absolutely gutted, because I was just like, oh, even though it's twins, I still would love to have a vaginal birth. But anyway, so I was waiting for my cesarean section, and I went in for my routine 36-week appointment. And when the midwife was listening in to the baby's heart rates, one of the twins' heart rates were decelerating. So in that case, I have to go into the hospital for them to do a full assessment. So by the time I'd got to the hospital, they could not monitor both the twins' heart rates properly. So they couldn't really tell what was going on. So it looked like both of the twins were having some kind of distress. So the plan was then made for me to have an emergency cesarean section. So the point at which where my trauma first kind of started was as they were sighting the spinal, and then I laid down and they were checking the spinal block. That was fine. But then when they started the cesarean, it was a split second thought, and I was like, oh, I can feel that, the knife to skin. And so I, called them out to stop, that I could feel that. And they stopped and then gave it some time and then reconvened. However, during that cesarean, I was still in pain. And, previously to that, me and my husband had always agreed that we wanted to record the birth. So actually, I had video confirmation that I was still in pain. And you can see me in the video going, that hurts, and there was just no acknowledgement from, the medical team. So that in itself was the kind of the beginning of days of trauma to come. And then, so that was day zero of when the twins were born. Into day one, when my catheter was taken out and I'd had my postnatal check, I was in pain, of which I thought, okay, maybe this is just normal post-cesarean pain, because I hadn't had a cesarean and I wasn't sure what to expect. But every time I moved, I was like, gosh, this is like really painful. Like, I was like, this doesn't feel normal. And I was in the side room, and so the toilet is literally right there. It should take me less than 15 seconds to get there, but it literally would take me about 25 minutes, because I'd literally have to take a step, pause, let the pain ease, then take another step, and my husband would have to like hold me up. And when I'd got to the toilet, I was thinking, oh gosh, yeah, this is the first time I'm getting up, there's going to be some blood. Not a single drop of blood. So I had not a single drop of blood for the first 2 days. So day one, so giving birth on the Wednesday, no blood on the Thursday, and then the Friday, still no blood. And I'd been assessed and there was no concerns. But I was in increasing amount of pain. I was so scared to move. My husband was there, thankfully, able to stay with me. He had to pass the twins to me, one baby at a time, because I could not move. I was so scared. And the fear of being, I felt like I was going to die. That's how I felt every time, and that's why I was so scared to move. So it wasn't just like, oh, I'm just in pain, but the pain was associated with this fear of pending doom. So, anyways, on the night of day two, which was a Friday, my community midwife had come in to see me because she'd finished the shift helping in the hospital, and she came to see me, and I told her, what was going on, and she was just like, this is not normal. And she could see that my tummy was still very big, considering I'm not expecting a flat tummy, but it was still very distended, of which I communicated to them. I was like, my tummy's very distended, I'm in a lot of pain, and I have no bleeding. Those are all quite, those are three red flags. And she then went out and basically made sure that I was going to be reviewed. Then that night, the just before the registrar came to see me, I finally then felt a pop sensation, like as if your waters were going. And I've never experienced waters going, so I was like, "Oh, this is a bit weird." And I felt it, and I saw that I was bleeding actively. And so I told the midwife, and just didn't seem to be any concern there. Um, and then the registrar came and saw me, and she then done a speculum, then a vaginal examination, and then, confirmed that my cervix was sitting at 4 centimeters dilated, and that what she felt was bulging membranes. And that's a term that we use for women who are still pregnant when their waters are bulging through the cervix. So, how am I 2 days post cesarean with a cervix sitting at 4 centimeters dilated with bulging membranes? That doesn't make sense. So then she goes out to you could see the confusion in her face, like with what she was feeling, because she's like, that's all she can describe, that what she's feeling. So she went out the room and spoke with the on-call consultant, and then she came back in, managed to get off the bed very slowly because I was just sat in soiled blood, and I was like, I need to get up. And then she came in the room and was like, right, we need to, take you over to delivery unit. And then when I was taken to delivery unit, again, the movement caused me so much pain, the breathlessness pain where I felt like I'm going to die. It was in my chest, in my back, in my abdomen. There was just pain everywhere. And I was on increasing amounts of pain relief, and pain relief that they don't necessarily usually use in maternity, because I was needing more. And I would only get pain relief for about 20, 30 minutes, if that, and then the pain would just come back. So I just learned to just sit still. So we're now Saturday, day three. I'm on the delivery unit. This is early hours, like midnight, and then that's when I'm first put into lithotomy. And then I have another vaginal examination. So by this point, I've had three. This is my third vaginal examination. And they confirmed the same findings. The plan is then for the consultant to come and see me in the morning to do a transvaginal scan and make a plan. And then the consultant came in the morning. Just before the consultant came in the morning, this was probably the most undignified moment I've ever had in my whole life. And, it still makes me sad when I think about it now, because I thought, okay, before the consultant comes, I'm going to stand up, try and get myself, freshened up, etc. And as I said, every time I moved, I was in so much pain. So as I stood up, I then became incontinent, and I had to stand there. I was literally weeing myself because of the pain. I had like no control, and it was the most embarrassing moment of my life, especially because my husband was there with the twins. Then I had the midwife, the student midwife, and I think just the shock of it felt like time stood still. All I could hear was the urine dropping on the floor. And it wasn't like I was trying to stop it, you trying to use my pelvic floor to stop, but nothing. And I just had to stand there and just wee myself. And obviously, the midwife and the student midwife were, they were so compassionate and so empathetic. But it was, in my head, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, like, what is going on? What's happened to my bladder? We know with cesarean sections there is the risk of damage to the bladder. It's rare, very rare, but these things, as a clinician, these things are running through my head. Whereas a regular woman may not necessarily think about those things, but in my head I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on, what's happening. So anyways, eventually get to the shower, and then after that, every time I then stood up, I then had to have a bedpan next to me because I kept wetting myself whenever I'd stand up out of bed because of the pain. So the pain would just make me lose bladder control. So, anyways, so then the consultant that comes in, my legs are put into the thotomy again. The consultant does a vaginal examination. She confirms 4 centimeters dilated bulging membranes, then proceeds to do a transvaginal scan. So the reason I'm mentioning, you know, the repeated procedures is because, this is a lot of in and out of me. It's not just that it's one vaginal examination and they're doing all these things. This is a vaginal examination with hands coming out, then going in with a speculum, coming out, then going with the transvaginal scan. So this is multiple in and outs whilst my legs are in the thotomy. I'm using the gas and air. And, I remember using the gas and air to the point that I just wanted to disconnect. It wasn't even for pain relief. It was to disconnect because in my head, I just could not believe what was happening to me. And I just thought maybe it's just a dream. Maybe I just need to like wake up. So anyways, that was the Saturday, day 3. The plan, so they confirmed the bulging membranes, and then the plan is to take me to theatre that day. So because of the issue with the spinal during my cesarean, they wanted to put me to sleep because they didn't know if potentially if the spinal had caused some damage as to why I was experiencing this back pain and the fact that I felt knife to skin. So because of that, I had to remain nil by mouth. So literally eating and drinking nothing. Bearing in mind I'm breastfeeding twins as well. And anyways, the consultant comes back in the afternoon and says, we think it's best to wait till Monday because as it's the weekend, if anything was to, go wrong, we don't have the full MDT around. So it's best that we do it on Monday where we've got the full support of the MD team and that my hemoglobin was stable. So that was kind of her rationale. And, I'm just like thinking, so is my pain not a red flag for you? Like, but when you're I'm not there as a health professional, so I'm not able to reason. Like, I'm just thinking, I am 3 days postnatal with twins. I've already experienced so much now. My pain just feels like it's never going to end. Is that not enough? To be like, let's take you to theatre because I'm genuinely contributing the pain I'm in to the fact that I have got retained products inside. And so the midwives, again, they weren't happy that they were going to make me wait till Monday. They were just like, they cannot leave you like this till Monday. And so the plan was then for them to give me like more pain relief, a patient controlled pain relief so that I could manage my pain relief because I wasn't achieving pain relief for a good amount of time. And the midwife saw that. So then into the Sunday, into day 4, the midwife was like, look, stay nil by mouth because I'm going to see if they can take you to theatre today because they can't leave you like this. She was so empathetic. And so I remained nil by mouth again. And then it wasn't until the afternoon again that they came back in. I had another vaginal examination for them to assess. And, they were like, we're going to do an MRI, an MRI of your spine to see if there's anything going on. And that could basically see as to whether we need to put you to sleep or if we can do another spinal when you go back to theatre. And then that I wasn't going to theatre. And so again, day 4, I'm just, I feel like I'm being pulled and just back and forth. And I'm just exhausted with the pain. And bearing in mind my eldest, this is the longest time we have not seen him for. He was born during lockdown. So, he was used to seeing us every single day. And this is we're now 4 days without seeing him. And so that was taking an emotional toll on me and my husband. But thankfully, they actually let him come in because they don't usually let visitors on the delivery unit, but they did let him come and see us. And I was so grateful for that. That was just like, that just felt like home for me, for even in the chaos of things, just being able to see him and introduce him to his younger brother and sister, that was just a little bit of normality. But as soon as he left, it was just like back to business sort of thing. So anyways, the night of day 4 into day 5, they were extremely busy in the hospital. I had no pain relief. It was late, so I was in more pain because they were so busy and I was asking for pain relief. My blood pressure went up. It was just cascading. And the plan was to take me to theatre first thing Monday morning. So Monday morning comes, it's a new consultant. He wants to examine me again. And I remember I had expressed breast milk for the twins for when I went into theatre. And when he was coming into the room, he was a little bit careless and he knocked over the breast milk. And I know people say, no, don't cry over spilled milk, but that was like everything for me, that was the one thing I could do for my babies at that time. And I remember when it spilled on the floor, I just felt numb. I had no anger, I had no tears, I was just numb. And because it was just like that one bit that I could give my children, he just took away like that carelessly. And and it was the fact that the plan has already been made to take me to theatre. Why are we re-examining me? And you know, I was on a normal bed and, they were trying to position me on this bed. So this was the first time I kind of felt manhandled. The consultant and another doctor like came with their arms under my armpits and tried to move me up the bed. And like I said to them, I was like, this can be done on a delivery bed because that's usually when it's where these examinations have been done, but they just ignored me. I felt like a mouse. Thankfully, the midwife in charge came into the room and told them, stop, and like I felt really advocated for. And she said, "Stop! This woman has not had any pain relief overnight because I'd mentioned that it was busy." And she's like, "And this examination could be done on a delivery bed." Obviously, the doctors weren't happy because they were being told to stop. So I got my pain relief. I was changed onto a delivery bed, and the consultant came back in again. Legs into lithotomy again. Examination confirms the same things: 4 centimeters dilated bulging membranes. So in that time, I would bleed, stop bleeding, bleed, stop bleeding. So after an examination, I'll have some bleeding and then I'll stop bleeding. So I wasn't even needing to wear like a pad, for the first um, 4 days. I wasn't needed. I like, you have your hospital bag packed with pads. I barely used any. And so, anyways, the consultant examines, then he does a transvaginal scan, confirms the retained products. But then what was different is that he attempts to remove some of what was inside in the room. And, um, you know, I remember I was away, like I was so disconnected with the gas and air. But as soon as he attempted to remove some in the room, I was straight back in. The pain was extreme. And he showed me the bit that he removed. Then he done a re-examination with the transvaginal scan, and he was like, "Yeah, we still need to go to theatre." And I then wasn't taken to theatre till coming to like 4 o'clock in the evening, towards the evening. So I'd been waiting all day to go to theatre, and being in pain that amount of days, where the pain feels like, is this ever going to end? Am I ever going to get better? It does something to your mental state, you know. And after eventually, they finally took me to theatre, and then again, the pain relief was just being delayed. So I decided that I wanted to go home because I can manage my pain relief after. And then as recovering, I started to notice that my mobility was being impacted. Me and my husband were quite fit and healthy people. I used to run, go for long walks. We would do long cycling, and so we were quite active people. And I was struggling with it. And I was like, this is just not right. And then I had a few falls, um, and I was like really struggling to wait there. And then I ended up in hospital, and alongside that, my mental health went downhill. I thought talking about it, I wasn't keeping quiet. Whenever I talk to someone, I'll share my story because I was thinking talking about it will help. Talking about it will help. But the trauma had already happened. I hadn't realized I was already traumatized. Um, and so then I was done 5 months postnatally. I was diagnosed with postpartum depression, anxiety, and PTSD, and I started therapy. But also, it's key about when you start therapy, because even when I had started therapy, I it worked initially, like for the first few sessions to talk through things, and then I got stuck because I was still living in the trauma, and the result of the trauma was still happening to me. So I was still experiencing the effects of everything that happened with my mobility. And then the next year, I ended up in hospital for 5 weeks where I was unable to walk, and I was discharged home in a wheelchair with a hospital bed in my living room, commode next to me, I have carers, friends and family were having to help me look after my kids. I lost all my independence, gone, you know, and my whole life I was vulnerable. I was living out of my living room. I couldn't care for my kids the way I wanted to, and I'm quite a woman that I do things myself. I just get on and I'm a doer, and to have to step back, and it wasn't by choice. I just had to. That was very hard to deal with, to watch others care for my children. When my children were sad, they wouldn't come to me, they'll go to others because of all that time of me being away and being unwell, I lost that maternal bond with them. So that then also added to my postnatal depression. And so that, in short, is like my journey. And I was diagnosed with sort of many health issues, and I've got a couple of autoimmune diseases that now mean I'm on like lifelong treatment, to help my body not deteriorate, and awaiting a few procedures to happen, to help my mobility. And in that time, my self-esteem was so low. I had put on so much weight, and I didn't recognize myself anymore. And so that was a lot to go through. Thank God now, things are moving forward. And that's because I've had to push myself. And through that is where the Black Maternal Advocate then started, because I was just like, women and their families, birthing people need advocates. Because I alone, just trying to advocate for myself wasn't enough, even as a health professional. Unfortunately, the color of my skin was a massive contribution. And so I don't want other women to go through what I went through. I want women and their families to be equipped and to know their rights, to know what they can ask for, to know that they can speak up and not have to just accept what is being, told in front of them. Um, and yeah, that's kind of my story in long short.
Wow. I mean, I'm always, I'm always inspired when I listen to you because, you went through so much pain, so
Mm,
much discomfort, so much. You walked in there like, an independent woman
mm,
who, knows her rights, who not only knows, her rights, but also is equipped with the medical knowledge that's necessary in the
mm.
midwifery field.
Yeah,
You had your own lived experience as a first-time mom, and that was the second time you're having. So
yeah,
you had expectations. You walked in there, and your life changed completely. And and what I note from that is that despite all the trauma that you've been through, and despite all the challenges that you had to encounter, you still noticed those, kind gestures, those,
mm,
at every moment you don't fail to recognize those.
yeah,
And it's so amazing because you were really patient and you are,
mm,
like very patient to the point where I mean, yeah, it became
yeah,
like I think that's why you became completely numb because
yeah,
yeah, like you've been saying it, they've been saying it, they've been checking over and over and over again, and
yeah,
that only it's so it's that feeling is it can be emotionally and physically debilitating,
yes,
to be held like that, and
mm-hmm,
like in a very I wouldn't say that completely there was negligence there. There was,
mm,
a lack of listening, lack
mm-hmm,
of actually looking at, the observations and
mm-hmm,
acting appropriately
yeah,
according to what they'd seen. So you have all of that, and you
mm.
still are Aramide, the nice, happy, person. I tried to hold my tears again today. That's not the
I
first
can
time. I feel
see.
like I'm crying, right? Literally, and because I also have twins, and
Yeah,
same thing, like completely different, sacks, both
yeah,
of them. So that's a lived experience that we share. So
yeah,
knowing that and knowing what you went through, at I don't know, I wouldn't like to even compare the levels.
mm,
It's unbelievable what you went through, but it's so inspiring that you went through that journey and use that now to change things
Yeah.
because I see you, delivering training here and there, and now that you've been, appointed at a national
Mm,
level to change things, I think we really need your voice there.
thank you.
Um, it, I mean, I have so many questions. I think I'll just start with wow. I mean, you just mentioned that, the skin color, your skin
Mm.
color had something to do with your, the experience that you went through, that you had. So would you like to share a little bit more about that, please? I know
Yeah.
something for our
Yes, of
audience.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. So, the data is out there and it's been out there for a while. It went from, black women being 5 times more likely to die in childbirth or in the postnatal period, in pregnancy, childbirth, and the postnatal period, being 5 times more likely to die than their white counterparts. It has now changed to 2.9, so now 3 times more likely. Um, and though that sounds like, oh, the numbers are going down, it's not. It's not because care has improved. It's because, unfortunately, more women are dying. So it kind of like expands out the rates of it and makes it look like it's less. But no, the system is still unfortunately failing, black women. And when we look into the history, and this is something I covered in one of the training that I did, when we look into the history of where this racism has come from, because what it likes to be referred to as inequalities, and yes, there are inequalities, but we need to call a spade a spade. It's racism, and it's not necessarily individual racism. It's systemic racism. And there was a world renowned gynecologist called Dr. Sims, who he was respected because he done the first most successful procedure of a fistula. And so it was like, gosh, yeah, he's the father of gynecology. He's done all this breakthrough um, science, etc. And actually, when we look at how he got to there, what he did to achieve those results, the black slaved women that he performed these procedures on without analgesia, you know, and this is how he got his status and his name and reputation. And actually, we need to look at that. And this is what has filtered through the medical system all these years. Because then when I would tell people, yeah, there's racism, they're like, no, the NHS isn't racist. And it's just like, not overtly. It's not like, oh, you're black, so I'm going to treat you like this. No, it's within the system. There's bias within the system. The way in which we are treated, the way in which we are responded to, the way in which we are listened to or not listened to, you know. And there is research out there to show that black women receive epidurals later because their pain is not believed. You know, the when we did when I did my training, when we were taught how to recognize progressive, issues or health deterioration, it was taught on white skin. So then when a black woman comes in presenting with those symptoms, we are looking for example, mastitis, for example, because I experienced mastitis after my first pregnancy, and we're looking for the redness of the skin and the heat and the area looking inflamed. But on black skin, it doesn't look like that. So when I looked at myself, I knew I had mastitis, but I was like, this is not what I was taught how it looks like. It's the same thing how a lot of research, and now that they've changed a lot of things in recognizing jaundice in black and brown babies. You know, black and brown babies were being failed before, and when jaundice was being picked up, it was very severe. A lot of them were past having phototherapy treatment but needing transfusion, etc. So now they've done things to and how to recognize jaundice on black and brown babies, and thus that is improving the outcomes. So when we think about black women and how when we are presenting with things and how when we're not listened to, and believed. It explains why we're having the outcomes. It's not because, as some people like to put, biology. It's not our biology. It's the bias that comes with it. It's the systemic racism that comes with it as to why we are treated that way. That's what it is. And that's what affects. And yeah, we have the data, we have the research and everything. But now there needs to be active change and not just a tick box change. It needs to be ongoing. It's not just, yeah, we're just going to do this year, we're just going to do this training this year. No, this is a whole thing. The NHS needs a complete overhaul and changing, but that's going to take time. And that's why my work is important, because it's like, that's going to take time. So what I need to do is equip women and their families.
Wow, and you're doing it so beautifully. Um, and
Right.
yeah, and that's why your presence, your story matters, because
Mm,
you have the midwifery, insight, and also that
mhm,
personal, lived experience insight as
mm,
well. And as you said, it's, like the racism, it's not something that should be denied within the
mhm.
NHS. It's systemic.
Yeah.
It's covered. It's
Mhm.
overt.
Yeah.
It's conceptions. It's in the biases, the assumptions,
Yeah.
the you know, and the picture is, maybe that we still have so many challenges, but I'm so glad
Of
that
course.
so much is happening as well in terms of, trying to change it, as you said.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, someone, if you went to medical school and they told you that, a certain symptom would be the skin turning blue, you'd wait your whole life for that to happen to a black and brown person. It
Exactly.
never happened, right? Like, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that does not mean to say that there are no issues with people with other, skin colors, but we're
Mhm.
just saying that, particularly in terms of your own lived experience and
Mm.
mine too, which I'll talk about in my upcoming
Yeah.
book, I
Yeah.
thought you should know,
Can't
many
wait.
things happened. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah. I literally cannot wait.
Thank you, Aramide. I mean, if you could redesign maternity care, and that's actually
Mm.
what you're doing with your new role, what would you change first, please?
Um, so I think one of the things that needs to first be acknowledged is that what is happening within maternity care is a patient safety issue. And with that, um, it needs to be so that needs to be recognized, and there needs to be accountability. And because of how long this has been going on for, it can't be soft accountability or just a little lessons are learned. No, there needs to be repercussions for bad practice. And not in the sense, and when I say that, it's not in the sense because people sack that midwife. No, it's not about that. But there needs to be consequences for when things go wrong, and it needs to be treated as a safety incident, red alert, alert, or etc. Because we have the reports, we have the recommendations, we have the inquiries. What we don't have is consistent, enforceable follow through. So that's why these things are just able to go on. Um, every trust should be able to tell you what they are specifically doing to address racial disparities in for their maternity outcomes. And if they can't reach those changes, there needs to be consequences. Because if there's not consequences, then it's just going to keep getting brushed under the carpet, and we're still going to get the comments of we've learned lessons. But that's always what has been said. We're learning lessons, but yet women, black women, brown women are still dying at a higher proportion rate. So what lessons are actually being learned other than these are just statements? Um, Continuity of carer is key. And I say continuity, so some people say continuity of care. No, it's continuity of carer. So when you think back to my story, when I said my community midwife came in, She was the one, because she saw me throughout my pregnancy. And I must highlight, she also saw me throughout my first pregnancy. So she knew me. She knew what I was like. She knew what was abnormal for me. And it was through her coming in, she was the catalyst to things moving forward. She was able to go and advocate for me and speak up for me, not just from what I've told her, but from what she knows about me, because she was my continuity of carer. The evidence is out there. It shows that continuity of carer that reduces adverse outcomes. And every woman should be entitled to that. Obviously, from a midwife perspective, I know what it's like. We don't have enough midwives. What is going on currently right now, the fact that so many midwives are training and then there's no jobs for these newly qualified midwives. How can how can those two statements exist? How can it be that we need midwives, there's no jobs? That doesn't even make sense. Why is there money or the funding not being poured into that? Especially with all the data and everything out there, this should be priority. So accountability, continuity of carer, and we need to start also collecting um, proper data in terms of not just um, Black women, but cultural data where it understands the differences between Black communities, intersections, socio-economic status, geography, disability. Disability is a big thing for me right now because obviously, as a result of everything that's happened, I've become a disabled mother. And so these things also need to be highlighted and looked into so that it can be fed back into the hospitals with the care that we're providing, that these certain things, if we are doing these things carelessly, it can lead to disability. And in the ideal world, every woman and family should have an advocate. These organizations, these trusts should be working with these grassroots organizations to improve these outcomes. Because if they don't use them, and if they try to do it by themselves, it's going to fail. These grassroots organizations have built community trust with these communities. So you can't just come and say, oh, no, we'll just take over. No, utilize these grassroots organizations to improve the outcomes of these Black and brown families within your care. Encourage advocacy. I remember before, as a midwife, I really have the utmost respect for doulas now because I realize what they bring. Before, there was this whole thing between midwives and doulas, and like if a woman had a doula, there was like this kind of unseen tension. Whereas now, if a woman has a doula, I would even encourage women, if financially, if they are able to have a doula. Because if the midwife necessarily can't provide that continuity of carer, the doula can. And having doulas also shows that it improves outcomes. And so these things, it shouldn't be about, postcode lottery. These services should be available to all women, Black, white, brown, available to every woman. And it's not that we're starting from scratch. These things are already there. They're already in place. Utilize them. Stop making it difficult. Stop making people jump through hoops. Take away all the red tape, etc. But it starts from up there within the organizations. The hierarchy that people say isn't there. It's there, but it needs to start from there. Once they're on board, it filters down and it will change the whole culture. You can do as much training, etc., with, the nurses, midwives, doctors on the ground. But if up there is not in support or not in agreement, then it's not going to work because it's not going to filter through.
Wow. I mean,
So yeah, there's so much I would love to see, change. But I obviously we have to think practically. What's doable at this point in time? Those are the short-term plans. Long-term, then it's the other things, the ongoing. So yeah, I hope that kind of answered the question.
beautifully. Beautifully. Oh my God. I mean, it's and practicality is
Yeah.
key. You just shared so many, great insights now. I mean, acknowledgement, Yeah, so acknowledgement, recognition, research, getting the data,
Mm,
continuity of care, and cultural safety, as you said. There's so much there, and
mm,
accountability. I
yeah.
love all the points that you listed, and in terms of continuity of care, where, as you definitely pointed out,
Mm,
um, you know, you also talked about the issue is there. There we
mm,
go. And here we are. We want, continuity of care where to be something that exists. But then there's, lack of midwives around the world, especially
mm.
since we're talking about this country. So, lack of midwives, or some of them are completely burnt out because of
Absolutely.
overload. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about, needing more midwives and not investing more,
Mm,
not relative, there's no relative investment, no proportional investment
mm.
in that sector. So there's an issue there. And
Big.
yeah, that's the title of my next article on LinkedIn. Just to put out there. There's the draft there. I'll be polishing
Yeah.
it out later. But that, needing 1
Yeah.
million more midwives and
Mm,
actually not, working towards that goal in an
mm.
effective way. So, I mean, I love talking to you. You share so many
Oh, I
stories.
love talking to you too.
Yes. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, we cannot talk about maternal health without talking about mental health because these
Mm,
two are linked. And
yeah.
looking at your own experience, I'm like, that's exactly what happened. You went there with,
Mm,
good mental health, and then you
hmm.
walked out with, you know, having actually you needed more, help, and
Yeah.
you still do as you
Yeah.
mentioned. So just really powerful suggestions here, Aramide, as always. And I know that we hear a great deal about cultural safety,
Mm.
but in your view, what does a genuinely effective training look like? The training program could look like.
So from a point of sort of cultural safety
Yeah,
and
yeah,
inequalities, etc.
yeah.
So I think one of the things that I am starting to realize is that, and obviously this is something I feel extremely strong about because I've seen lots of training. I've been on it, tick boxes without actual change happening. And that's something we need to get away from. You know, good cultural safety training is not a 1 hour e-learning module. It's not a poster in the break room, and it's absolutely not a list of cultural facts about different ethnic groups, which people think is. That approach can actually entrench stereotyping rather than dismantling it. So what good training does is build reflective practitioners. It gets the practitioners to ask themselves, what are my own assumptions? So you're causing everybody to think as individuals. Um, what are their own assumptions? How do power dynamics play out in this consultation room that they are in? What does it feel like to be a black woman presenting to a white clinician who doesn't believe her pain? You know, when I did one of my last training, I was really trying to push, people to think about what they have seen, trying to give real life scenarios. So thinking about when there's handover, and if you've got a woman with a name that is not easily pronounced, do you just shorten her name, or do you take the time to, you know, go to the woman and find out how to correctly pronounce her name. And if it means writing it phonetically, then, is that something you're passing on, or you're just going, we're just going to call her Sally? Is that something, which happens, And, you know, these are things that I was trying to get, the midwives in the room to really think about, things that happen on the ground that they could relate to. And it's the training is not going to be one off. It needs to be facilitated by people with genuine expertise. Ideally, those with lived experience. Because one thing I have learned is lived experience should be at the center of the design of any form of training. It needs to be paired with that structural change. Because you can train the most culturally aware midwife in the world, And if the system she's operating in is still stacked against black women, her individual practice can only do so much. So, you know, live it collaborative. If you've got, because loads of women have lived experience, or loads of women, both people, etc., have lived experience. And, I'm in a very fortunate position that I have the medical knowledge and the lived experience, but that's not the case. But if you've got, the professional with the knowledge, bring alongside, let's collaboratively work with, again, with these grassroots organizations, with women who have had lived experience. Because one thing, most women that have gone through traumatizing experiences, what they want to see is that change has happened as a result. And I can guarantee you, most women, if most women were, doesn't necessarily have to be invited back to the hospital where they experienced the trauma, but if they had an opportunity to be invited back into that hospital where the trauma took place, knowing that their story is going to be used for training and for change, they will be on board, because they want to see that actually what I went through was not for no reason, but actually it is now being used for change.
Indeed.
So that collaborative care of, or collaborative that composition of, genuine expert knowledge, medical knowledge, midwifery knowledge, and then lived experience, that will create the ultimate, I believe, best cultural safety training, inequality training, anti-racism training, Black maternal health, etc. Everything surrounding that. You need lived experience embedded in that.
Wow.
Because you can talk about things. It's the same way when, somebody could be, so for example, us, the reason we're able to relate on so many levels is because we have lived through it and we can understand it from a first point of view. But if I was to share something with you that you've never lived through, you can only just sympathize. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But imagine me trying to teach you about something you have been through that I haven't been through. You will see the gaps, because you'll be like, well, that's it from a theoretical point of view, but actually from a personal point of view, it's like this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that is important. Lived experience is what should shape training. We should be learning from these women that we are harming or that have been harmed. And that is what's gonna make things better, because we can then literally hit things, hit the nail on the head, to be like, this is where we're falling short. This is where we need to improve. These are the areas. And so, yeah, that.
Yeah, keep talking, because
training without accountability
yes.
is theatre.
Yeah.
That it's just acting.
Yeah.
Tick boxing.
Yeah.
But good training leads to measurable change, and that's why we need to collaboratively use the expert knowledge and lived experience. That's the key thing for me.
Wow. I mean, the more you talk, the more I am so glad that, Canvas Bridge and your organization, have signed the deal of
Yes.
agreement to collaborate, because, and I need to actually say that out there.
Yes.
It's in the pipeline. Because there's so much that we share. At Canvas Bridge, as you know, lived experience is at the center of what we do. And as well as research, because we believe that expert by experience, they actually know what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you're talking about working with grassroots organizations. It's so key, because that's how it should be, from the bottom up, not top down. And as you know, what we try to do is bridge sectors, bridge countries, bridge experiences, and all that. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel.
Exactly.
Why? Yeah, we're trying to work with grassroots organizations here and in Guinea at the moment. That's the focus as well. So bridging.
Amazing work.
Amazing.
You are just amazing. You are just. I'm so admired by you with the work you do.
Thank you. Wow, thank you so much, Aramide. You've been an amazing, host here, and you are always an amazing person. We're almost
Oh, thank
there.
you, and you
Maybe just
too.
a few questions and we'll
Yep,
end.
sure.
Now we talked about the healthcare professionals and what we can advise them. How about the policymakers? Now you're going to be working with them anyway. So
Yeah.
what are you going to tell them? Or, what do we need, so that policymakers can actually contribute in a better way to
Yeah.
improve the maternity health care settings,
Okay.
you know.
Perfect. I'll try to be disciplined in what I say. Um, so to policymakers,
Mhm.
what I would say is stop commissioning reviews and start implementing recommendations. We don't need more data. We don't need more reviews and all this sort of stuff. That is money and time and re-traumatizing and lots of PR. You know, we have the evidence. We've had it for years. What we need now is political will from them and funded action, not another working group. Put the money where your mouth is. That's what we don't need to keep sitting around and, okay, let's do this, let's collect this. No, let's just do what the recommendations say, not as a tick box, but that these are long term. So in economics, it's called like supply side policy. So these are long term things, not just short term. This is something that is just going to keep going. So be ready to let's just invest in that. Let's do this, like practically. To healthcare professionals, I would say believe Black women from the get go, not conditionally, not after they've proved their pain, not when their notes confirm what they're telling you. Start from the get go. When they say what they're saying, why do you have any reason not to believe her? Where's that come from? Again, these things, this is where when people say, oh, there's no racism. These biases, where's that come from? Why don't you believe her? You've never met her. So why don't you believe her? How do you know? So we need to start from there, start from belief. That single shift in practice could literally save lives. And to both, nothing about us without us as Black women must not just be consulted at the end of the process. No, we must be in the room from the beginning, shaping the questions, not just answering it, co production. You know, this is not just a nice gesture. It needs to be, it's essential that it is a requirement that we're there from the beginning. Because, we see all these things that happen, all these things that are put into place when these working groups come to implement these recommendations, and then you see and it's just like, so these are things for Black people, but you've got a completely all white working group. Where's the representation? Where's the lived experience? You can't expect people that don't know what it feels like, what it is to live like that, to experience that, to even be able to understand. It will be surface level, and you can tell it from just the way they speak. But you need us there. Policymakers need to put the money where the mouth is. Health professionals need to listen to the women, and we need to be Black women, brown families. We need to be in the room when these things are all coming together to make sure that this change is sustainable and long term.
Wow, I could not have put it in a in a better way.
It was just three.
Yes, go there. We need you there. You deserve that seat. I mean, it's
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
happy that this neonatal and maternity task force and the expert groups that are alongside, I'm hopeful is the amount of diversity and representation in these groups.
yeah.
And I don't think this has been done before. So to see that, it's positive. Doesn't, and I'm just trying to remain hopeful, because it's like we've seen these things over and over again, and you don't want to fall into that trap, or not necessarily a trap, but it's hard not to fall into that state of mind where you're just like, this is just going to fail again. We're just going to go around the same circle. But seeing this and seeing the diversity and the amount of people that are on board, it's given me hope. And I think it's given many people hope.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And I know, I think most of you there, and I know that you're
Yeah.
amazing people.
Yeah.
You, Jane Sandal, all are doing amazing
Yeah.
things. Sandra, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just wonderful that, you are working towards changing things within the
Yeah.
maternal, you know, health sector. And, we're grateful for that, and
Yeah.
all the people involved.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, we co-production is really key. And as
Mm.
you said, we've seen so many reports and so much evidence. I was at the Maternity Stakeholder Council, and I represented how they used to be called then Maternity Voices Partnerships. And
Yes. Yeah.
and yeah, there was so much evidence, so many things that, and you could see that people are passionate. And as you
Yeah.
said, it's now about time that we moved forward.
Mm.
And Aramide, if there's a black woman preparing to give birth today, what
Mm.
would you tell her, please, briefly?
Um, well, firstly, I would want to say if, especially if there's a black woman listening who has ever felt dismissed, disbelieved, or unsafe in maternity setting, what I want them to know, first of all, is what happened to you was not okay. You were not too much. You were not difficult. You were a woman who deserved better, and the system failed you. For the woman who is pregnant and hearing all of this, I want her to know that there are people fighting in the policy rooms, in legal proceedings, in training rooms, on social media, to make sure that fewer women face what all these other women have faced. You are not alone. You are seen, and your experience matters. The key thing I want them to know, and as I tell every woman now, is have somebody with you who can speak with you and for you. Advocacy is key. So when people are choosing birthing partners or pregnancy partners that are going to follow them through the pregnancy, attend their appointments, it doesn't always just have to be the father or the partner of the child. It doesn't have to just be the mother, like the mother-in-law, the your mother. Choose somebody who you know will speak up for you, because that's what matters. When you don't have the voice to speak up, have somebody there that will speak up, that will ask the questions. That's what you need. That is what is important for you to have throughout your pregnancy, but also to speak for yourself. That is still important, is to learn to speak for yourself. And, to everyone else, this is not a niche issue. Maternal mortality, mental health, it is all a human rights issue. And the racial disparity within it is one of the most urgent patient safety issues that needs addressing. It's a crisis we have in our country. And I hope, all these conversations that we're having today have like moved something in them. And because change in everything requires all of us, we all have to be on board with it. So seek, for all these women, seek help, get that help from the get go. Don't think I'm going to wait until things happen, but just get things in place. Learn your rights, learn what you can and what you can ask for, because there's always a choice. Yeah, I hope
Wow.
that's.
These are these are very, very important pieces of advice. They are
Mm,
wonderful, and I'm sure that they can be very helpful to people who are
mm,
listening, and hopefully will help them navigate the system
Mm.
in a safer way, or at least with more reassurance. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, I think we've reached the end of this
Yeah,
podcast, and it's been wonderful.
it has been.
Yeah, and I just wondered, if you could share, a last message, or,
Hmm.
maybe what gives you hope about the future
Hmm.
of maternity care, or anything else that you wanted
Yeah,
to share, please.
yeah. I guess some things I wanted to just mention is like from all of this, what I have learned, and to share that, I've learned that, and as contradictory as this may sound, that the system isn't broken. It is working exactly as it was designed to work. And that is a harder truth to sit with, but it's more useful because that's the truth. I've learned that, lived experiences is not a lesser form of evidence. The fact is, it is evidence. And I will never apologize for centering it. I've learned that this work requires you to be bold. You've got to hold two things simultaneously: deep compassion for the women you're supporting, and unsentimental analysis of the structures causing harm. You cannot afford to be swept away by one or the other, because there is an expense. And personally, I've learned that from my own experience, as painful as it has been, it's not a weakness in this work, which for a while I struggled with that. I felt I was very weak and I felt I'd lost myself. But it is the source of the most important insight. It keeps me honest, it keeps me grounded, and it means I will never speak about, women in an abstract way because I am one of them, you know. And, you know, as I mentioned before, there are people that are fighting like you, like me. And though a lot of it may seem behind closed doors, I am praying for the day when the work that we are doing changes everything and no longer do women have to worry, especially black and brown women and their families, that they don't have to worry about the care they're going to receive, that they're going to be able to one day to just be able to access care knowing that they're just going to receive the best care, and that the issues we're having now will be a long distant memory. I look forward to that day, but right now the work needs to be done, and we need as much people on board. We need allies, we need change makers, we need bold people who are ready to stand in the face of adversity and be willing to be persecuted and to be shunned to the side and be, you know, spoken ill about. But these are things that need to happen in order for change to take place.
Wow. Beautiful how you come the introduction of your answer to the conclusion. It's just it's so well put, because it makes us all reflect.
Mm,
Um, there's no point trying to fix a broken system, because that's what you said. It's not broken, it's just how it was. So, because if you think that it's broken, then what you're trying to do is just trying to fix it, right?
mm-hmm,
Whereas if you know that it's wrong from the
mm-hmm.
onset, then you'll dismantle it and build
Yeah,
something new with all
exactly.
those people, with the right, in the right way, and also with the best strategies. So
Exactly.
wow, you're leaving me with so much food for thought. I mean, as always. I am so glad, to have you here, and also, to be working
Privilege.
with you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience, your expertise, your vision. You are such a wonderful and inspiring woman, and I'll say that
Oh,
again.
thank
I
you. And
always
you.
say, thank you. I mean, it's beautiful the way you work, the way you share your story, and try to change things in
Hmm.
for the better. Thank you again for being here and for sharing your story and for giving us your precious time. I really value it.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Really thankful. Development doesn't happen in the boardrooms alone. It happens through conversations,
Absolutely.
communities, yes, and courageous people like yourself
Mm.
willing to challenge the status quo.
Yes.
Yeah, because we
Yeah.
truly believe that, meaningful conversations can drive meaningful change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
100%. Thank you. It's been a privilege and an honor. And we could talk for hours,
Indeed, like we were
days on
saying.
end.
And to all those who are listening, to this podcast, thank you so much for listening to Development One Topic at a Time, powered by Canvas Bridge. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with your networks, and join us as we continue making the world a place that is much better, one topic at a time. Bye.
Bye.